Chapter 3. The Forest Calls. Zeph invited herself over that night for a sleepover. Xenia's parents were thrilled. They kept popping in all evening to suggest games or bring in snacks.
They kept popping in all evening to suggest games or bringing in snacks.
Xenia should have been embarrassed. Her head was still spinning from Zeph's plan. Xenia didn't really believe Dad's story, but if some hungry thing was lurking in the forest, she didn't want to face it just because her friend thought it would be fun. We'll wait till midnight when your parents are snoring in bed, Zeph said. Xenia was too nervous to reply as they slipped into their sleeping bags. Earlier, Dad had unrolled the bags for them in the sunroom. It was the first time he had pulled out the camping gear since his strange forest encounter. Xenia tossed and turned for the next hour. Images of horrible, slithering creatures filled her mind. She had finally begun to fall asleep. A tap on her shoulder woke her back up. It's time, Zeph said. Xenia gulped and slowly tugged on her boots and jacket. Zeph dug through the camping gear bin. She found two large flashlights. Then together, the girls tiptoed out into the night. They trudged through the backyard till they came to a wooden fence. Xenia unlatched gate and cringed as it creaked open. She and Zeph stepped out. Chapter 3. The Forest Calls. Zeph The forest before them was like a black wall that stretched forever to the left and right. The moon peeked out from behind a cloud. Its ghostly light shined on a space between two trees at the edge. It's like the universe is showing us the way in, Zeph whispered. Xenia couldn't get a word out. Her heart was pumping as fast as a hummingbird's wings. Let's go solve a mystery. Zeph grabbed Xenia by the hand, and in they went. The forest was darker than anything Xenia had experienced. It smelled damp, like rotting leaves. These trees were different from the ones on Zeph's favorite trails. The trunks were rougher. The leaves were pricklier. The trees stood close together, except for the path that seemed to open up before the girls. Still, every few steps, Xenia had to lift her feet over a root sticking out of the ground. But what freaked Xenia out most was the silence. She knew most birds would be tucked away and asleep. But where are the owls? She wondered. Or other critters that find food at night. If the girls stood still, nothing moved among the trees. The silence felt wrong. I think we should head back, Xenia whispered. Zeph laughed. Why? We just got here. Don't be such a scaredy cat. Xenia didn't want her
Xenia didn't want her
and to think less of her.
to think less of her.
So she followed Zeph deeper into the forest. That was when Xenia heard it. A sound that broke the silence and made her blood run cold. "Do you hear that?" she asked. Zeph paused. "Hear what?" Xenia closed her eyes to focus. "There it is again," she thought. It sounded as if somewhere a girl was crying. "I don't hear anything," Zeph insisted. Xenia turned one full circle, trying to find where the crying was coming from. Her legs shook as she stepped forward. The crying grew a little louder. She rested her hand on a tree to calm her pounding heart. Then Xenia realized that the crying was louder still. In fact, it was as loud as if the person was standing right beside her. Slowly, she pressed an ear to the trunk. "Zeph," Xenia said, trembling. "The crying. It's coming from inside the tree."